Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Toronto. A frustrating one. Leafs-Panthers. Leafs lose 5-1. Another day, another injury. Bobby McMahon goes down, joining the ever-growing list of Leafs on the IR. But, yeah, that you play with the team you got. You play with the hand you've been dealt, and that's what the Leafs are going to be stuck doing. And if you're already playing without Austin Matthews, Matthew Knies, Max Pacioretty, Max Domi, why not? Why not take another guy out of the team? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about this game, what there is, what positives there may be, and what lessons there could be. Lots to get into here on Game Over Toronto. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, once again, it's Zach Payne. Zach, good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, you were busy with Taylor Swift concerts for a little bit there.
Yeah.
It's been a while since you and I have been on a show together. It's a little unfortunate that the game we got was an absolute nothing burger where there was nothing happening at 5-on-5. Very
really
reminiscent
wasn't.
of, yeah, it was very reminiscent of the playoff series against Boston, and the key difference was the Panthers were shooting the lights out on special teams.
Yeah.
They had a couple of snipes from Reinhart and Verhaeghe. Obviously, getting a shorthanded goal is never ideal or giving up one is never ideal. We've seen special teams kind of help the Leafs win a lot since Matthews has been out of the lineup. Fell the other way tonight.
Yeah, this is a game where, and you mentioned Taylor Swift. I think you just got to shake it off. Like there isn't a lot of good to take from it, but the bad it wasn't horrendous. We've seen them play really bad games this year, and I don't think this was that. This wasn't great. But you look at like the shots, they were pretty even. They're aside from the plays that Florida scored on, they never felt really dangerous, albeit the Leafs didn't feel really dangerous either. Like it wasn't a blowout. It wasn't like some of these games, especially earlier in the year, where we came away from them feeling really, really frustrated. You kind of look at this one and just have to go, look at who was playing, look at who was in the lineup, and say that's just the way things went. And now we gotta get ready for Tampa on Saturday and hope that whatever version of this lineup that can be cobbled together is ready to go. I kind of feel like that's all there really is to this one. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back on Saturday. No, how do you feel about it? How are you feeling?
Well, to drive home the point that there was really nothing happening for either side, the Florida Panthers in this game, 2.39 expected goals. Relatively low. Like that's below average. Average you'd be around 3.5 in a normal game. And considering all the special teams, 2.39, that's a good defensive effort. The Leafs, 1.98, which is bad, but it gets worse because Mitch Marner accounted for 0.9 of those expected goals, which means non-Mitch Marner players on the Leafs roster combined for one expected goal tonight. Which I mean
that explains why he was the only one to score. I think basically. Let's start looking at this game. They don't get out to a strong start. Like they get that early kind of break with Matthew Tkachuk taking a roughing penalty like less than a minute into the game, and the power play looked a little sluggish. They weren't great in the first minute. They got better as they went. But the refs clearly wanted to set a tone early. At least that's what they said on the broadcast. And so each team got a penalty early for a big hit, and the Panthers take advantage of theirs with the first Barkov goal. And a short time later, they get their second one just off some good sustained pressure. So not a strong start to the first, but Stolar's in net. With those two in particular, I don't think there was much he could have done.
Well, if we take a step back, this was a big game for the Panthers. Coming into this game, they'd been losing a lot. They let the first place in the Atlantic lead slip. They were trailing the Leafs by multiple points. Like, the Leafs are still technically in first place after this game, even though they lost. But the Panthers came into this game and they said, we need to get back to basics. We need to reestablish our brand of hockey. You know, Kachuk takes that penalty early. It is what it is. But in the grand scheme of things, the Panthers, that's what they want to do. They want to be a team that, you know, they will hit some guys away from the puck after the whistle, whatever it may be. And if they get called on it, in this case, they did at the start of the game, then you got to take advantage. You don't. Grabenkin then takes a boarding, which was it was a bit of a weird boarding where the player kind of got spiked down into the ice and not into the boards. But
I guess you can't really call that icing.
Yeah, regardless, it's a penalty. Like, he hits him in the numbers. And, you know, they score early. They came out with a lot more intensity than the Leafs, plain and simple. The Leafs were not ready to go in this game. Florida was. Florida had this game circled, and they took advantage early. The Leafs, you know, throughout the game, the Leafs started to look better in spurts, but it was nothing more than score effects. And the Panthers did a great job at just locking down the middle and letting the Leafs stay to the outside. I don't think the Leafs really got too many dangerous chances in this game overall, aside from the Marner goal, which was on the power play. Like, they did a great job. Like, this was a great game by the Florida Panthers. Yeah,
it was a complete game too. Like, you know, you don't want, if you're the Florida Panthers, you don't want to give up any goals, but if you have to give up a power play goal to Mitch Marner, you know, I think you're okay with that when you score 5 other ones. And I think this is becoming, you know, a little bit of a trend for this Leafs team, and it's a continuation of a trend that a lot of Leafs teams have faced, which is starting on time. This is something that has been talked about for years, and it used to be they would always play terribly in the first period. Now it just seems to be, at least, they play terribly in the first half of the first period, or not even terribly. They just kind of aren't ready to go. And, you know, even though they won their last 2 games, you know, the Vegas game and the Utah game, which I was lucky enough to be at both, you know, they both started in that same kind of way of, like, the opposing team dominates the play. The Leafs are kind of chasing it, and then around the midway point in the first period, they sort of go, we can do that too, and turn things around, and then start to run away with it in the second period. This game, of course, lacked the running away with it in the second period, but it did feel like they just sort of they've fallen into this habit. And Florida was able to take advantage of it in a way that Vegas and Utah in the last couple of games weren't able to. And so even though I think the Leafs played better in the back half of the first, they still were kind of chasing the game. They weren't, they were behind. They were 2 goals down, and at no point did they even manage to draw even again. And, you know, that's something that if I'm Craig Berube, if I'm the coaching staff, that's something I'm worried about. That's something I'm watching as, you know, a problem, you know, that is something that good teams like the Florida Panthers are going to expose. They're going to go, hey, these guys don't come out ready to play. They need about half a period to warm up. So let's rack up some goals here. And then they're chasing us for the rest of the game. Then we have the advantage from here on out. And it's a concerning little trend that has emerged in the last little while, even as they've been winning and playing some pretty good hockey. And, you know, let's not forget, like you said, they are still first in the Atlantic.
Yeah, no, I don't think the slow starts is quite as, I don't want to say desperate of a situation, but it's not as big of a notable of a situation as I think some people will drum it up to be.
Sure.
I think like in the Utah game, the Vegas game, or however many games you want to go back, the Leafs haven't given up that many good chances at the start of the game. Like, sure, they haven't brought their own offense, but it's more like in a, like, you know, UFC, boxing, whatever, a fight where the fighters are just feeling each other out for the first couple minutes. The Leafs kind of let themselves settle into the game. The difference in this one, Stolarz lets in a couple of early goals. And you know, the second one, he's screened, and it's kind of just a weird chop in front of the net. The Barkov one, though, that's a shot that he had been saving all year. That's a shot Joseph Wool's been saving all year, and it goes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's this game is the difference in this game is, or at least at the start of the game, is having good and like notably above average goaltending versus average. Stolarz was not like it's pretty clear to me this was his worst game of the year. But big emphasis on the air quotes because it wasn't exactly horrible.
Yeah,
the stats look horrible, but
no.
It's just a couple of these shots where if he saves one of those first two, okay, it's 1-0. That's a lot more manageable than 2-0, and then they get the shorthanded goal later. That's just a
that
lot
can't
of things
happen.
going wrong at once. Yeah, that's a lot of things going wrong at once, and Reinhart, given time and space in the high slot, it just absolutely rifles that. But like if Stolarz is able to give you one or two of these back, and Nylander doesn't take a stupid penalty at the end, it's suddenly a game. It definitely isn't 5-1.
Yeah.
Right. So it like empty netter caveat there. So like it's just Stolarz wasn't quite as rock solid as he has been, and as Joseph Wool has been in recent weeks. So it just looks a lot worse than what actually transpired on the ice.
Yeah, jumping ahead a little bit, the Verhaeghe goal late in the third. Yes, it's a power play goal. You know, and on a power play goal that, you know, on a power play, you're at a disadvantage. You can't really, it's hard to get too upset about, you know, those goals being let in. That was the one for me where I was like, you needed that one. You needed that one. You know, the Barkov one, yeah, you probably want that one back, but it was still a situation where I think you could have recovered. You don't give up the Verhaeghe one, you don't give up the shorthanded one. Then all of a sudden it's 2-1 going into the last minute, and we're looking at a potentially different situation. Now that's all, you know, if ifs and nuts were candy and but candy, you know, whatever. However that saying goes, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, that's it. You know, then we're looking at something different. You look at the second period, you know, again, the shorthanded goal, that's just one of those breakdowns. You know, again, you don't want it to happen. I don't think this is a burn the tape game by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's a lot that can be learned from this game. And I think that's one where you have to look back at that and go, what exactly happened there? Tavares was trying to almost do too much. Nobody could quite get into position, and the Panthers just took advantage of some chaos. I mean, what did you make of the way they kind of broke down there?
Yeah, it's the aggressive penalty kill continues to be the Leafs kryptonite. The Panthers just, you know, they pressure Tavares at the point, force him into do it. It's simultaneously doing too much and also not paying attention to detail. Tavares does a quick spin because he expects, oh, hey, there's guys on me. That means the guy on the half wall is wide open, except he wasn't. And then it comes the other way. Tavares gets back, Nylander gets back, but because of it's just unfortunate, Nylander and Morgan Rielly kind of almost hit each other, but they get in each other's way enough to where Rielly is then flat-footed, unable to challenge Reinhart's shot, and it is in the back of the net just like that. And real quick, going back to Stolarz, should be noted, he hasn't played in 11 days. I don't know if that is I don't know how relevant that is to the start of the game specifically in terms of working his way back in. But yeah, the Leafs having, what was it, 4 games in 16 days or something? Like, yeah, it's a factor, right? And Joseph Wool got back-to-back starts. They kept him fresh, and I assume he will start on Saturday as well. Stolarz has just been sitting a while, and it's hard to work your way back into game action that quickly. Again, not like the Leafs did the most favors to him in this game, but they hardly hung him out to dry either. Like that one power play instance sucked, but and the power play as a whole, I mean, Alex Nylander being on the top unit should tell you what you need to know about where that is at right now. But just didn't work.
And I think like the problem in this game for the Leafs was lack of offense. The defense was still relatively solid. Obviously, it's a loss, so you wish they'd been better. Goaltending was, less than we have come to expect from this tandem. But everyone gets an off night here and there, and I think this was Stolarz, like you said, maybe struggling to get back into things after sitting for so long, after playing for so much, and but the offense just never could really get going. Like you were saying, the expected goals extremely low, and the expected goals by people named Mitch Marner is catastrophic. Not named Mitch Marner is catastrophically low. And I think that's been the difference through all of these non-Matthews games is the stars who aren't wearing number 34 have shown up. Marner, Tavares, Nylander, William Nylander, that is. They've all been big factors. And again, looking back at the games against Vegas and Utah, you knew when those guys were on the ice. They were a big part of those games. And they created a lot of chances and created a lot of goals. And in this one, they were, Florida did a really good job of neutralizing them. They couldn't get anything going. And then you're reminded that the rest of the team is basically the Toronto Marlies at this point. You got Steves, you got Alex Nylander, you got Grabenkin up there. Nick Robertson, God love him, he's trying his best. He is trying his best. But you're looking at a team that is lacking so much of its elite offensive potential when Austin Matthews goes out, and its secondary scoring is gone too, with Calle Yarncroc and Max Domi and Max Pacioretty being out of the picture, and never mind the fact that we don't even have to mention David Kampf not being there too. Matthew Nyes is gone. There's, he's somewhere in between top line and secondary scoring. Like he's in that kind of gray space in between. Like you're missing all of that. And so even if you get okay-ish goaltending, decent defense in a game where the other team isn't at their best either necessarily, you just suddenly notice, oh, right, this is a borderline AHL team with a couple of really high potential guys who, if they are neutralized, you got nothing. You got nothing that you can get going when it comes to scoring. And, that's why even though they may have matched the Panthers in shots or even come out a little bit ahead, it never felt dangerous. The Marner goal felt dangerous. There's maybe one other chance in there, but they never felt like any of those were really going to get behind Bobrovsky unless he was the one that screwed up, and he didn't. He was on his game, so you kind of have to give it to him.
Yeah, who knew having Pontus Holmberg as your second line center is not a recipe for success.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I think Holmberg has actually played fairly decently down this stretch here without Matthews in the lineup. Like he hasn't been great, but as sort of a fill-in player, this is what you want Pontus Holmberg to be on your team, as somebody who can step in when people are out. And he's been okay, but as we continue to lose players, all of a sudden his role keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're left wondering what, if anything, can be done.
Yeah, I just want to say, though, real quick, I feel so bad for William Nylander. His line mates had a combined 4 points coming into tonight, and they still have 4 points.
Yeah.
I actually, you know what? Lauren and I were talking about this, too. Like, Nick Robertson has 1 goal this season. Mm-hmm. That's his only point.
That's
what
tough.
Is it you say you do here?
Yeah. It's wild watching Nick Robertson this year because he's getting his chances in the sense that he's getting lots of playing time. Berube's giving him more ice time than Keefe did. And yet, and you see it. You see it when he's on the ice. He has so much talent. There is real raw potential still there. And he just can't put it together. It's just not coming together for whatever reason. Maybe he's trying to do too much. Maybe he's not trying to do enough. I don't know what it is, but you just see it. Nothing is going his way. And like you said, you kind of look at him and go, "Oh, what are we doing here?" And look, if your biggest problem is on a team is Nick Robertson, who makes less than $1 million this year on a 1-year deal, I think you're doing okay in a season overall. But it's the potential that we all see in him. We see that he could be great. There is greatness there, or it could be at least be very good. And it just never manages to all come together at the right time for him. I can only imagine how frustrating it must be for him, given how frustrating it can be to watch from the stands, from our couches, and just try and make sense of it. Yeah, let's transition into our second period here, and as we do that, of course, want to remind you, if you are enjoying the Game Over content, make sure you're subscribing to the various Game Over channels and social media accounts, including, of course, the Game Over Toronto YouTube channel and the Game Over Toronto podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. And if you want to go a little bit further, you can support Game Over on Patreon. Just search for the Game Over Network. There's some great perks over there. And if you're based out of Quebec, you can also do some crowdfunding through La Ruche. That's a way that not only can do crowdfunding, but also get some government funding from the government of Quebec. So if you're enjoying what we do and you want to support it quite directly, those are some opportunities you have. In the second period, the story of the last little while has very quickly become the injuries on this team. We've talked about it a little bit already, but Bobby McMahon goes down, and this one does not return with something that they're calling a lower body injury. I haven't been checking to see if the post-game quotes have started to come out. Have we heard anything about what's up with Bobby?
Yeah, so Berube, in his post-game media availability, all he would say is day-to-day, but we'll have to see tomorrow how he is.
Hasn't Matthews been day-to-day for about 6 weeks now?
Well, okay, here's the thing. Matthews was day-to-day, then he was in Germany receiving special treatment. Now he's back skating. Matthews and Matthew Nyes are both on this trip, so they should theoretically return. I mean, there was a whole conversation about will Matthews return tonight. Obviously he didn't, which means he's probably going to return Saturday. Same thing with Nyes, you would assume. But McMahon, I would not expect him to play on Saturday. Maybe check back early next week.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What's Nick Abruzzese doing these days? Is he ready for for another look? Because we've been wondering going into every game for the better part of 2 weeks now, is Matthews going to be back? And every time the answer has been no. Now, it is good news that he's on the trip, that he's out there with the team. But it could still be a no. It could still be a no for Matthew Nyes. And if it's a no for Bobby McMahon as well, then we truly are looking at a borderline AHL team. Again, an AHL team with John Tavares, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander on it. But, the Marlies, who started very strong in the AHL, are, now all getting their showcase here in the NHL. And the fact that they've kept up, that the team has continued to, win more or less. They lose this one, but they've won more games than they have lately. I think it speaks well of the organizational depth. But what are we supposed to take from these games? What are we supposed to take from the fact that they are, they have a winning record, even if they lost this one, at a time when, was it 7 forwards are out of the lineup?
With McMahon out, it'll be 8. But I mean, the Leafs have won 7 of their last 9. It's not that they're winning more than they're losing. This has been their best stretch of the season so far. They've catapulted themselves into first place. And what you take away from that, the Leafs defense is legit. Money Puck put out that tweet a couple days ago. Jake McCabe and Chris Tanev are literally the best shutdown pair at 5-on-5 right now in the league. Morgan Riley and Oliver Ekman-Larsson are in the top 10. I haven't checked if that's updated in the last couple days, but as of Monday, they that's 2 pairings in the top 10. When has that ever happened for the Leafs? Never. Not in this century, anyways. The Leafs have been the team system has been so effective. It's been so good at limiting offensive chances. It's resulted in the goaltenders both having these ridiculous numbers that are a little bit fraudulent, but they're still playing really well as well. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to all of you and say that Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz are actually 2 of the top 5 or 6 goalies in the NHL. But statistically, they have been, because they've been insulated with a great system and they've saved the shots they need to. The Leafs, and we talk about all the injuries. It's so far all been up front. We had the goalie injury, the Joseph Woll injury early in the season. They worked through that. Stolarz ends up playing a bunch of games. The defense has been pretty healthy, relatively intact. And they have depth that we've seen in spurts, but they've been able to rotate guys in and out. It's just been the forwards. And I mean, for what it's worth, the guys that have come in, they look the part. Remember, like this time, or not this time, but like at the start of the season last year, Fraser Minton comes in and looks like a lost puppy. He looked terrible. He didn't he was very clearly not ready. This time around, he looks like an NHL player. He looks like he could be a legitimate third line center. Nikita Gorbenkin comes in, looks like he is going to have a very long career as at least a bottom six forward, possibly better than that. I'm not going to hold out hope for that, but looks like those are two solid third liners for the next 5, 6, 7 years potentially. And even if you have a guy like Nick Robertson who's still struggling right now, he's still we talk about it, he has talent. If he gets a goal to go in, who knows what'll happen to his confidence? Maybe he'll start piecing it together. So all the young kids, it's fun to give them a shot. It gives us more content to talk about, right? Because if the Leafs were fully healthy, they roll into tonight, they lose, and the game looks like this, it's okay. Yeah, this was a bit of a bad game, but they were due for one. They were playing good. That's it. And not that we have the most storylines coming out of this game, but the fact that we're able to look at all of these young players up front and evaluate them to see where they're at, it gives the organization a lot more of a sense of where the depth is at and where the prospect pipeline is at. And it gives us, the fans, a chance to see these young kids that we normally wouldn't see unless you go to Coca-Cola Coliseum and go see a Marlies game.
Yeah. And then of course you throw in Alex Nylander, who was an NHL player going into the season. It was weird that he signed an AHL deal, and it was always a matter of time before he got called up. But the one Marlies game that I went to this year, Alex Nylander got 2 goals in it, and very clearly looked like, if not the best player out there, one of the best players. You could tell he was perhaps a head above some of the competition in the AHL. So, as the, regulars start to slowly come back, it'll be interesting to see who the first man down is. Steves was the first one up, Gorbenkin followed, and then Nylander. As we start to, get back to, having the regulars in the lineup, this fun little experiment's going to come to an end, and we're going to have to, send some guys down who haven't done anything to deserve to be cut. They just have the misfortune that most of us have of not being Austin Matthews. And therefore, if it's the choice between most people and Austin Matthews, you're picking Austin Matthews. But yeah, still just, hopefully this is something that when we look back on this season, we can look at it and go, okay, that's the fact that they had to deal with all these injuries early, kind of a good thing. I've talked before about, I want to see how this team handles adversity in game and over longer periods. And the fact that you are missing now 8 forwards up front, and you have not just a winning record, but decidedly winning record in those games, I think speaks well of the remaining guys' abilities to, hunker down, get it done, as well as, what the organization has in terms of guys who can come up and play a third or fourth line role, as Steves, Gorbenkin, Alex Nylander have. It bodes. I do think this bodes well if everybody can get healthy, which is a big if, as we've seen, because every game or every other game, somebody else is going down. And yeah, unfortunately, Bobby McMahon was the guy tonight. In terms of, sort of season long storylines, we talked a lot at the start of the year about the power play. That's something else that's sort of gotten sorted out here. The penalty kill has largely been pretty good. Yes, they gave up 2. Is there anything you're seeing special teams wise that has stood out to you in the last game or so?
I mean, the systems look relatively okay. The power play looks like it's starting to dry up a little bit, obviously, and I think what you're seeing is the the difference that teams have seen more tape of the Leafs in November, and they can kind of not that teams necessarily game plan that much in the regular season, but they can kind of get a sense of, okay, the Leafs are doing things a little bit differently this month. Let's adjust accordingly, and let's be a little bit more aggressive on them and stop letting them set up at the blue line to set up their plays. Like it's the same things that gave them troubles in the past, but it's just a slightly tweaked version of that. The same way that the Leafs power play, it's not like they had this giant revolution on the power play. They just started doing things a little bit more simply. Their core systems are still relatively the same. So it's just small tweaks here and there. But when Matthews comes back, it'll be very interesting, because if you'll recall, it was when Matthews went down with an injury that the power play suddenly revived itself. So we'll see how big of a problem he really was.
Yeah, still one of the strangest aspects of this season, and this season has had a few curious storylines, and the fact that the power play got better when the best scorer stopped playing,
and the team in general.
Yeah, that doesn't that's not usually how things go. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. But we'll move into the third period here, and again, we'll remind you, if you want to submit any questions as you're listening live, throw them into the YouTube chat here, and we will tackle them during overtime. And also worth mentioning, of course, if you are enjoying Game Over and you want to support us in other ways, you want to even spread the word about Game Over. A great way to do that is to get some merch. There's tons of good stuff available on the Game Over website. Links are all in the description. Get in there. You can get the classic logo, get the goalie logo, get the forward defenseman skater logo. It's good stuff. It looks good. It's high quality. It's well worth a purchase, especially if you're enjoying the show and you want to get the word out about it. Now, I know for all us Canadians, Thanksgiving was a while ago, but it is American Thanksgiving coming up here. And this is, classically the, sort of a signpost in the NHL season, a point where people start having a look at your team. You've seen them for enough games now where the trends are emerging. The things they're doing well are clear. The things they need to work on are clear. It's no longer early in the season necessarily, and it's kind of a good point for reflection and thinking about what needs to be worked on going into December and eventually the Christmas break. Zach, I'll ask you, what has been your overall feeling on this season, like zooming all the way out, looking at the whole 20 some odd games that the Leafs have played this year, bearing in mind they are in first in their division right now, and but at the same time there was a few weeks there where we were absolutely screaming at them every single night. How are you feeling about this team, big picture, for this year here at this sort of made up signpost?
Well, to start, it's nice to get to the American Thanksgiving post and not know who they're going to face in round one. That is
exciting.
We don't know who they're going to play in the playoffs already. It's crazy. They are still in the division race, which is equally as mystifying. Usually by now, go ahead.
Watch it somehow still be Tampa. Like, watch it just like that's just how it shakes out again. Like it would spend the whole year. And spend the whole year going, who could it be? Who could it be? And then it's Tampa, and or Boston. That's probably what it's going to be, isn't it?
My favorite possible scenario is the Leafs finally win the Atlantic just to get Boston again. I mean, regardless, you're based on how the things we know about the Atlantic, the top four. Oh, wow. Who would have guessed? It's the top four that we all expected.
Yeah.
The bottom four we all expected. So you're going to get to the playoffs, and unless depending on how the wild card shakes out, if you win the division, you might play a Metro team. You're going to play someone you've played recently. You're either going to play Boston, who you played a bunch over the last several years, Tampa, who you played twice in a row, or Florida, who kicked your ass 2 years ago. So you're going to play someone that you're very, very familiar with, and, you can't really worry about that right now. The only thing you can worry about is just trying to win every night. And if the Leafs are able to actually win the division, that would be a clear improvement from the previous couple of seasons where they've obviously been unable to do that with their regular season success. And I mean, look, does it matter? No, but getting home ice advantage would be nice. I mean, and at the end of the day, if you could avoid playing Tampa or Florida in the first round, that gives you a better chance to win in the first round, which as simple of a statement as that is, that would be only the second time since 2004 if they are able to do it. So our standards are incredibly low here for playoff success. But regardless, as far as the Leafs specifically, the defensive improvement is notable. We've seen stretches in the playoffs where they've been able to shut it down, play low event hockey. We haven't seen that in the regular season. I think the next significant, I don't want to say test, but key marker will be when the forwards are healthier and come back, will the offense come with it? If the offense is able to get even to league average, if you're the 16th overall offense in the league, the Leafs are going to win so many games this year because their defense has been like top 5, top 3 in the NHL in terms of expected goals against, save percentage, all that. So you just need a little bit more offense and you would, crazy concept, but maybe having the best goal scorer in the league come back, returned, fully healthy, might help them score more.
Seems like an interesting concept worth testing. Yeah, I feel like I don't know if the Leafs are necessarily that much better this year than they have been in previous years, or if the division is just finally starting to fade off of some of its dominance, and they've kind of, it might be a bit of both, because you're absolutely right. The defense has been just night and day compared to previous years, night and day. And the goaltending has been much more solid than it has been in previous years. I mean, look at the last 2 years. You had borderline goaltending controversies around this time. Samsonov last year was unusable. Like, he was getting sent down to the Marlies to not even play for the Marlies, just to work on his on the mental side of the game, trying to figure out how to play goal again, because he was unusable, while Joseph Woll was playing really well and then got hurt and they had to run Martin Jones out there. Go back the year before that, Ilya Samsonov is stealing Matt Murray's job, essentially. And this year, through not quite the smoothest circumstances with Wool getting, starting the year hurt, but you've sort of found two goalies that either one starts and you feel, oh, okay, you feel pretty good. You don't feel like that's the thing that you have to worry about. So that's all been good. The injuries have made everything confusing up front. There's not much, there's no other word for it, I think. Like you said, having your best your best goal scorer, arguably the best goal scorer in the world, go down, and suddenly the team figures out how to score power play goals and score in general, is bizarre. But more than anything, what I would like to see from this team, more than even winning the division, which would be nice, just for the sake of doing it, like, why not go for it? What I want to see from this team is I want to see them, when they play those teams that they are inevitably going to play in either the first or, fingers crossed, second round, when they play Boston, when they play Florida, when they play Tampa, hell, when they play the Rangers, I want to see them show up and play up to those games, play those big games well, and, make the other teams feel like they are to be feared going into the first round, because everybody knows the first round curse. I almost feel like teams, they don't necessarily want to play the Leafs in the first round, but they aren't necessarily worried about playing the Leafs in the first round because they know the Leafs have a tendency to beat themselves in the first round. And so I'd like to see them playing these games, making those other teams just a little bit miserable because they keep losing to the Leafs, so that when the playoff comes around, yes, everyone will make the jokes. The jokes are going to happen. We just have to live with it. That's our fate as Leafs fans, having been through the last several years. That's just how it's going to be. But I want people to make their joke, but then remember the last couple of games that the Leafs played against whatever team it is they play in the first round, and go, oh, they actually kind of dominated them. They actually kind of played playoff style games, and they actually kind of sow that seed of doubt, because that's what they need to do. And even last year, even though they came up short in overtime of Game 7, which you literally can't get much closer to the second round without making it. They managed to do that to Boston just a little bit, because they came back. They came back in games 5 and 6. They made that a series when they should have just lost in Game 5 and had it be over with and put us all out of our misery. They kind of did that. So I want to start working up to that from this point on in the season. So whoever it is that they play in the first round is questioning things as soon as they start to break even the slightest bit the Leafs way in that first round of, oh crap, this is that team that has, put us in our place for many, many months. That's what I want to see from them. Everything else after that is gravy. I want them to make the good teams sweat, because that's what good teams should do.
Well, I don't think making good teams sweat has been the problem, because not to go back to a darker time, but that is, in the way I interpret it, it sounds a little dangerously close to respect in the handshake line.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't want that. I want that. I don't want respect in the handshake line. I want respect and fear before the puck drops in Game 1. Because that's how we feel playing all these other teams. We were afraid of Boston last year. We were afraid of Tampa 2 years ago. We weren't afraid of Florida, and probably should have been 2 years ago. That's how it's felt going into this. Not respect in the handshake line, respect and fear before puck drop.
I'll be honest, I wasn't scared of Tampa 2 years ago. I was not even scared of Boston last year, and with good reason. The Leafs beat the Lightning 2 years ago. The Bruins hardly played good hockey in that series. That was not that was the ultimate midfest, that playoff series. I don't think anyone with a pulse watched the Leafs and Bruins in that playoff series last year and thought, wow, one of those teams could win it all. It was awful. It was some of the worst playoff hockey we've seen from the Leafs. I think, honestly, the biggest fear factor right now is if you're playing the Leafs in a playoff series, you scratch your head and go, but what if they actually put it together this year? What if we're the team that blows it against the Leafs and we get laughed at for not keeping up the narratives? I will say, if the Leafs played the Rangers in the first round, that might break my ability to watch hockey, just because the Rangers are the most... I don't even know how to properly express this. They're just so analytically backwards, but they defy everything because of Igor Shesterkin. If you thought scoring in the playoffs was a problem before, wait until the Leafs are controlling 80% of the scoring chances, but score 1 goal a game. Because the Rangers are historically on, and this is why analytics you have to take with a grain of salt. Because if you looked strictly at analytics, the Rangers over the last 4 or 5 years have been one of the worst playoff teams in that stretch, but they've made the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times, or one time, and they've consistently won playoff series because they just defy logic. They have Shesterkin, who does a great job in net, and their shooting percent, they have really elite shooters that just... You don't need a ton of chances. You just need the ones that you shoot to go in. Every time they play the Hurricanes, every analytics site breaks down because it makes no sense. You have the analytical darlings in the Hurricanes and the antithesis of the analytical darlings in the Rangers, and the Rangers always win because just hockey. Hockey makes no sense.
Fair. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, anything can happen when you drop the puck. That is why we watch the games, why we love the games. But yeah, it's been a fascinating, bizarre start to the season, and it's going to continue to roll through into the new year and the Four Nations Cup and all that stuff, and into eventually, hopefully, the playoffs. I say hopefully just because I experienced the 18-wheeler go off the cliff a few times. Let's move into overtime here. We got a question in the chat from Josh DiSavino. Josh says, "Hey guys, love the channel. Just wanted to hear your general thoughts on Stolarz this year. Despite his average performance tonight, have we found a legit gem here?" What do you think, Zach?
How do we define gem in this context? I think for the value that for the contract the Leafs have given him, yes, you have found someone that is going to exceed the value of his contract. I mentioned this earlier in the show, but this is not a case of, wow, you have a top 3 goalie for the next 2 years. But you have someone who is going to compete with Joseph Woll for starts. And if you get 41 games out of him and he puts up a .920 save percentage, even though the team defense around him is helping a lot inflate those stats, you're going to be very happy with that. I don't think that, even with the performance tonight, you'd be hard pressed to find a Leafs fan that's going to have anything negative to say about Stolarz. Sure, his rebound control could use some work, but he's a good goalie and he's playing in a good system that's very goaltender friendly, which means he's going to look very good on the stat sheet and he looks good in the games. He's made a couple of there's been multiple instances this year where he's kind of bailed the Leafs out when there's a defensive breakdown, when they were still figuring things out at the start of October there. So for what the contract is, you found a gem, but don't confuse don't confuse him being better than his contract with him being elite. He's not an elite goalie, but he's a good goalie that's playing in a team friend or in a goaltender friendly system.
Yeah, he's not Shesterkin, he's not Hellebuck, he's not Vasilevsky, Bobrovsky on his best day. He's not that, but you also don't have to worry about him. I can't think of a game where I would say Stolarz cost them the game. Are there goals you wish he had back? Sure.
Every goalie has those.
Yeah, but he has not cost them the game. Even this game where, I think there's two or three of the goals you think, not his best moment. They weren't really out of it till the end, and what really took them out of it wasn't Anthony Stolarz, it was William Nylander taking a 4-minute double minor for high sticking. Right? That's what killed them at the end of this game. The fact that they couldn't get any offense going, that's what cost them. Anthony Stolarz kept them in it, he gave them a chance to win. That's what you need from your goalie. So gem in this is he he's maybe not a gem in the sense that he's going to be starting goalie for any team in the Four Nations Cup or all-star selection necessarily, but he is something that this team has been missing, or him and Woll together are something that this team has been missing, which is 2 strong options that you don't worry about going into any given game, even if they have a stinker here and there, which everybody does. Everybody's allowed to do that from time to time. You just hope it isn't Game 7 of a playoff series.
So here, to put this in perspective, I have a list of goalie contracts. I'm going to name a couple of the guys that are under $3 million. And you just tell me if you would prefer that goalie or Anthony Stolarz. I'm willing to bet you're going to say Stolarz for a lot of them. So starting here with $3.15 million per year, Sam Montembeault.
Give me Stolarz.
Semyon Varlamov.
Give me Stolarz. Maybe long term you're thinking Montembeault, but in the moment, give me Stolarz.
I would probably lean Montembeault because he's been dealt a brutal hand in Montreal, and I think he's better than what he shows there. But 2.75 Varlamov, 2.75 Anton Forsberg.
Yeah, Stolarz.
2.725 Karel Vejmelka.
You're starting to get into guys. I think you're just making up names.
Hey, whoa. That is the goaltender who just started against the Leafs on Sunday in Utah. Thank you very much. That's the best right-handed goalie. No, not quite, but he's a good right-handed goalie. This is a funny one. 2.6 million, making $100,000 more than Anthony Stolarz. Stuart Skinner.
Oh, oof. Boy, you wonder how Edmonton would be feeling with Anthony Stolarz in How they'd be, and look, the way things go, he'll wind up there in a couple of years because they take all the ex-Leafs. But you do kind of look at that Edmonton team and go, what do they need? Might be Anthony Stolarz.
Yeah, and then the after that, Stolarz is right below him, and then the rest of these guys, I'm just gonna rattle through quickly.
Yeah.
Are either 2.5 million or below. But I'll just go through a couple names, and then after you can tell me if there's any you would take over him. So Alex Nedeljkovic, Cam Talbot, Marc-Andre Fleury, Mackenzie Blackwood, Dan Vladar, Pyotr Kochetkov, Pavel Francouz, Connor Ingram, Ilya Samsonov, Scott Wedgwood, and Yaro Halak.
Yeah.
And then anyone after that is under 1.5. So the only one, like Connor Ingram, I would entertain a conversation.
Yeah.
Vladar has been hit or miss this year in Calgary, but like I don't know, I'd still take Stolarz.
There's a part of me that still hears the name Marc-Andre Fleury and just goes him. And there is a part of me that thinks, given the right circumstances, could Fleury go on one more magical run, something he's done before? I could see that happening, but it's by no means a guarantee with him. As great as he has been in his career, he is in his most likely last season.
Yeah.
We'll go one more question in the chat from Luke Venables, who says, "What is your realistic hope for a third line center?"
Okay, so there's been a lot of names that obviously are being linked to the Leafs. Some of them more realistic than others. Like people have been throwing out Nazem Kadri for a reunion there, mostly off of pure vibes, even though the contract makes no sense. The Flames trading with the Leafs, they
Never
won't
gonna
do
happen.
unless it's a massive overpay. And everyone that says let's bring back Kadri has also been saying John Tavares sucks, and they are the same age. So I don't see that one.
Draft,
I saw a granted it's not anyone credible, but I saw someone on Twitter being like, ooh, let's put together trade packages for Sidney Crosby. What would the Leafs have to give up? And I'm like, no. I love Sidney Crosby. The Leafs can't afford him. They don't have the capital to trade for him. And let's be honest, if he gets traded, he's going to Colorado. So
that'd be so fun, though. It'd be so fun if he came here.
It'd be so fun. It'd be the most wacky, leafy storyline of all time.
Yeah.
But they would have to pay so much to get him, and I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah.
So then you're into guys that are a little bit less exciting, but it's a lot more feasible. The most popular name of this list is going to be Ryan O'Reilly, because he even though he left Toronto due to not really being the biggest fan of the spotlight, he doesn't have a no-move clause. There is nothing he can do to prevent the Predators from trading him to Toronto. So if the Leafs want to go down that route, you know what he brings to the lineup. He would be a great third-line center for you, a great defensive third-line center for you. Sure, he lacks foot speed, but you can put two little minions on his wing and let them go crazy. The other option that has been getting a lot of traction is Morgan Frost in Philadelphia, who is reportedly on the way out. He has good underlying numbers, both offensively and defensively, can be hopefully a more well-rounded version of Max Domi, essentially. Like a more offensive guy that actually is not a negative in his own end. So I think I would probably lean towards Frost because he's a bit younger and he has a little bit more potential for growth. So we'll see what happens. I don't think anything is going to happen until closer to the trade deadline, even though the Leafs might, obviously explore their options. You kind of got to let everyone get healthy so you can get a more complete understanding of what you need.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I'd like them to bring in Morgan Frost just because I remember when Andy Frost was the in-arena announcer, and I just, much in the same way people want Kadri to come back for vibes, I feel like there's good vibes there. It's not based in anything to do with anything on the ice other than Morgan Frost, good player, happy to have him on your team. And again, the Max Domi parallels kind of there of like, it takes us back to that era, an older era. There's some good vibes there with Andy Frost. It's not the same, obviously. It's not a 1-to-1 Andy Frost and Ty Domi, but there's something there. Some fun could be had with that.
So here's your question: if acquiring Morgan Frost requires trading Nick Robertson, would you do it?
At this
like
moment,
if the Flyers if they say we want a draft pick and Nick Robertson, like let's say it's a second round pick or a third round pick, I don't know.
I honestly, might have a harder time parting with the second round pick. Like
Robertson's value is a fourth ish right now.
Yeah, like I like Nick Robertson. Like I said, I like him a lot. I want to believe in him, but it hasn't worked yet. Doesn't mean it still couldn't work, but if bringing in that I feel like having a solid third line center at this point is more important than having a winger with great potential who is just not getting anything done. So I would not necessarily happily, but without much holding me back, go for the trade there and say best of luck in Philly to Nick Robertson, and odds are he'd probably get there. Get the reset that he needs and
Absolutely
thrive. And as a fan of Nick Robertson, I would be happy for him.
The second Nick Robertson gets traded, he's a 20-goal scorer.
Yeah,
because,
1,000%.
The potential is there, and I guarantee it all clicks the second he's not a Leaf anymore. But like he is the exact kind of player that would thrive on a bad team, and then good teams would acquire him at the trade deadline. Yeah. Like that, he fits that mold of thriving in a worse situation, and then ends up being a trade piece for someone else.
Yeah, he's got that feeling. One last comment I'll just highlight from the chat here. Rodolfo Clarence says the Leafs are afraid of the Panthers. Basically, it's a psychological factor. The Panthers are the best team out there, but they have their weaknesses that the Leafs cannot exploit. The Leafs see the Panthers uniform and they get scared. Greetings by a Leafs fan from Chile, which that was what I wanted to highlight. Beyond the fact that he agrees with me that they need to make the other teams afraid of them instead of being afraid of their current teams.
I'm not going to lie, though. In the last probably 2 or 3 years, we've kind of gone to it's not the opposite end of the spectrum, but a different part of the spectrum where it's not that the Leafs are afraid of teams. It's that the Leafs are so amped up to try to match the physicality that they forget they have to also play hockey.
Right.
Like, how many times have we, like the Boston series or the Florida series, where as soon as things start getting out of hand, the Leafs are like, we have to prove how tough we are. Raw. Yeah. And then they like end up getting into all these skirmishes and then get killed in the actual game that matters because, that's...
it's about finding... You got to find the balance. It's like with everything. You got to find the balance of not backing down, but not forgetting that the game is hockey. The goal is to put more pucks into the other team's net. It's not to beat the other team into the ice. And so they have to
beat a dead horse, but the answer is not performative toughness, Max Domi. It is in actually it's being functionally tough and being able to play through all of the answers that other teams present with you instead of being psychologically outdueled and baited into these.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening all the way from Chile, Rodolfo. That's really cool. Really cool. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of our listeners wherever they may be based. But I think that is where we are going to wrap things up for tonight. Game Over Toronto will be back this Saturday as the Leafs take on the other Florida team, the other team they played in the 2023 playoffs, the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll have a great discussion after that game, I'm sure. Zach, if people want to keep up with you in between shows, what's the best way they can do that?
Best way is probably Twitter, which everyone has sworn off in recent weeks. But you can find me there at ZachPayne41. You can follow me on Blue Sky at ZachPayne41 as well. Not really active on there, but I'll try my best to keep up with everyone over there as well.
Yeah, and you can follow me at Dominic J25 I have a Twitter account. I have a Blue Sky account. I post on them about the same amount, which is not very much. My most active social media is Instagram, so at DominicJ25. There is the place to follow. And of course, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Toronto on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcatcher, and follow at Game Over NHL on Twitter/X, and at Game Over Network on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. I know we have a Blue Sky, but I can't remember what the what the handle is off the
I assume it's
top
just
of my
Game
head.
Over Network.
I think that'd be a pretty safe one. And join in.
The Game Over Network.
The Game Over Network. There it is. And of course, check out all of the various game overs for all the Canadian markets. Check out Hyperdrive Hockey for all things hockey related. There's tons of great content coming out of the Game Over Network, so make sure you are following and subscribing to all of it. But that is it. We'll see everybody on Saturday.